Deep in the Amazon, where thick fog wrapped around the river like a ghost, a team of explorers was trying to cross before nightfall. "Did you hear that?" asked Carlos, staring at the bottomless black water. A strange tapping sound came from beneath the boat, as if something was hitting its wooden hull. Then it disappeared. The team consisted of 3 people: Carlos, the expedition leader; Layla, a biologist recording everything with her camera; and Mark, the local guide who had seemed uneasy since entering this part of the river. Suddenly, a massive wave rose from the water, revealing a pair of savage eyes beneath the surface. Before they could react, a tremendous force struck the boat, sending Mark flying into the air and disappearing into the dark waters. "Mark!" screamed Layla, but her voice was drowned out by a strange laugh coming from the water. If they had known what awaited them in the depths of the river, they would never have entered it. But some rivers, once you enter them, cannot be left again. After Mark's disappearance, an oppressive silence fell over the boat. There was nothing but the sound of water droplets hitting the hull and the creaking of wood under their feet. "We need to move," said Carlos in a hoarse voice, his eyes still fixed on the dark water that had swallowed their guide. Layla, gripping her camera tightly, began recording everything. "This isn't normal," she whispered to herself, as the camera lens captured strange reflections beneath the surface. Around them, the jungle stretched endlessly, its towering trees wrapping around them like prison walls. The fog thickened, covering everything in a layer of mystery. Even the air felt different here, thick, humid, as if it carried the scent of death. "Have you heard the story?" Carlos suddenly asked, trying to break the eerie silence. "About a creature that lives deep in this river. The locals say it guards the river, but it shows no mercy to anyone who enters its waters." Layla stopped filming and looked at him. "Munwan?" "Yes," Carlos replied, then added in a low voice, "But they don't talk about it much. They say just mentioning its name might summon it." Suddenly, they heard a strange sound coming from the water. It was like a deep, muffled laugh, mixed with a sharp whistling. The boat began to shake slowly, as if something enormous was moving beneath it. "Don't move!" Carlos warned, but Layla was staring at the camera screen. It showed something strange, a massive shadow moving under the boat, far larger than anything they could imagine. "We're not alone," Layla whispered, feeling a chill run through her body. The river seemed to breathe now, the water moving unnaturally. As they tried to move away, they felt as though the river itself was pulling them toward the darkness, as if it wanted to swallow them whole. As the boat pushed forward through the river, strange phenomena began to multiply. "Did you see that?" Carlos shouted suddenly, pointing toward the water. There on the surface, large ripples formed, as if something big was moving beneath them. "I don't want to stay here," Layla whispered, her eyes fixed on the small camera screen. Moments ago, she had been recording her own reflection, but now the image showed something else, something resembling a distorted face staring back at her from within the water. The air grew colder, and the fog began to wrap around the boat like a net. Even the sounds from the jungle changed, no longer just bird chirps or the murmur of water. There were whispers, unintelligible words coming from everywhere. "We need to go back," Carlos said, but he suddenly stopped. The engine had stopped working. "What's happening?" Layla screamed as Carlos tried to restart the engine again, but it was useless. The boat was stuck in the middle of the river, surrounded by black water and thick fog. Then came the sound. At first, it was like a deep breath. Then it turned into a deep, muffled laugh, mixed with a sharp whistling. The sound was very close, as if it was coming from beneath the boat. "Mark!" Layla suddenly screamed as if losing control. "Mark, is that you?" But the answer was an eerie silence. Suddenly, the team felt something hit the boat from below. The force was immense, nearly capsizing it. Layla gripped the camera tightly and looked at the screen. There, deep in the water, something was moving, something huge and terrifying. "We're not alone," Layla whispered, feeling a chill run through her body. The river seemed to breathe now. The water began to move unnaturally, as if encircling them. As they tried to move away, they felt the river itself pulling them toward the darkness, as if it wanted to swallow them whole. Suddenly, the water around the boat shattered, as if an underwater storm had begun. "What is that?" Carlos shouted, trying to grab onto something to steady himself. The water was moving with unnatural force, as if encircling them. Then they saw it. At first, it was just a massive shadow passing beneath the boat, but it wasn't like any ordinary shadow. It had jagged edges, as if resembling an ancient sea creature. "There's something there," Layla whispered, her eyes fixed on the camera screen. The image now showed something clearer, a distorted face with savage eyes and razor-sharp teeth. "Munwan," Carlos whispered, as if afraid to even speak the name. Suddenly, the water rose to an incredible height, as if a small tsunami was forming in front of them. In the heart of the wave, the creature appeared. Munwan was larger than they had imagined. Its massive body was covered in hundreds of sharp appendages, and its head was a mix between a shark and an ancient amphibian. Its savage eyes stared at them with ferocity, as if enjoying their fear. "We need to move," Carlos shouted, but the boat was surrounded by water stirred by the creature. Then came the first attack. The creature's massive tail struck the side of the boat, sending Layla falling to the ground. The camera slipped from her hand, nearly sliding into the dark water. "Layla!" Carlos shouted, trying to grab her. But he felt something touch his shoulder, something cold and wet. When he turned, there was no one. "What is this?" he said in a trembling voice, looking at his shoulder. There were mysterious scratches, as if sharp fingers had clawed him. The water began to move again. The creature circled the boat, as if playing with them. "We can't escape," Layla whispered, struggling to stand. "It's watching us, as if it's enjoying our fear." Suddenly, the water rose again, as if the creature was preparing for another attack. "This isn't the end," Carlos said, but his voice carried deep concern. The river went completely dark now, as if the sun itself had disappeared. The monster controlled everything, and it was clear this was only the beginning of something worse. As the boat rocked in the black water, Carlos tried to regain his composure. "We need to think," he said in a hoarse voice, as if trying to convince himself as much as the others. "We can't give up." Layla was still staring at the fallen camera, but she didn't dare pick it up. "What can we do?" she whispered, as if talking to herself more than anyone else. "We need to fix the boat," Carlos said, inspecting the engine. But he suddenly stopped. His watch. His watch had stopped completely at 3:14, even though the sun was still shining outside the fog. "How much time has passed?" Carlos asked, looking at Layla. "I don't know," she replied in a trembling voice. "It feels like we've been here for hours, or maybe days." Suddenly, something strange caught their attention on the side of the boat. There was an old carving on the wood, as if someone had left it years ago. "What is this?" Carlos asked, leaning closer to examine it. The carving resembled the creature they had just seen, a massive being with sharp appendages and savage eyes. Beneath the carving, words were written in an ancient language. "I can decipher it," Layla said, reading aloud in a low voice. "Whoever enters the waters of Munwan will never leave." "Great," Carlos said sarcastically, but his face carried deep concern. Then the sound came again. This time it was closer, deeper, as if it was coming from inside their minds. "We need to move," Carlos said, looking around. But the water still surrounded them, as if the river itself was watching them. "But where to?" Layla asked, her eyes filled with terror. The answer was clear. There was no escape. The water began to move with unnatural speed, as if the river itself was boiling. "It's coming," Layla whispered, her eyes fixed on the black water. Then Munwan appeared. This time it was completely visible. Its massive body resembled a mix between a shark and an ancient amphibian, with long, sharp appendages protruding from its body like wires. Its savage eyes stared at them with ferocity, as if enjoying their fear. "We need to move," Carlos shouted, but the boat was surrounded by water stirred by the creature. The creature began circling the boat, as if playing with them. Its massive tail struck the side of the boat again, sending Layla falling to the ground. "Layla!" Carlos shouted, trying to grab her, but he felt something grab his shoulder, something cold and wet. When he turned, there was no one, but the scratches on his shoulder became more pronounced, as if they were sinking deeper into his skin. "What's happening to me?" he said in a trembling voice, looking at Layla. "It's affecting us." Layla whispered, her eyes filled with terror. "These aren't just attacks. It's changing us." Suddenly, the water rose again, as if the creature was preparing for another attack. This time, its face was very close to the boat. Its massive mouth was full of sharp teeth, as if ready to swallow them whole. "We can't escape," Carlos said, feeling despair take over him. "Wait," Layla suddenly said, looking at the ancient carving on the side of the boat. "There's something here, something that might help us." "What?" Carlos asked, but he didn't wait for an answer. The water began to move with greater force, as if the creature was preparing for its final attack. "The sounds," Layla said, reading the words written beneath the carving. "Whoever enters the waters of Munwan will never leave unless they give something." "What does that mean?" Carlos shouted. "We need to give it something," Layla said, looking at Carlos with deep concern. Before they could say anything else, the water rose again, revealing something strange beneath the boat. There was another creature, smaller, but just as savage. "This isn't the end," Carlos said, but his voice carried deep concern. The river went completely dark now, as if the sun itself had disappeared. The monster controlled everything, and it was clear this was only the beginning of something worse. Part 7. Unresolved Ending. After hours, or perhaps days, Carlos found himself alone on the riverbank. He didn't know how he had gotten here. All he remembered was the darkness, the black water, and the savage eyes that had been staring at him. Layla. He whispered her name in a trembling voice, but he heard no response. There was no trace of her. Around him, the jungle was eerily silent. The fog still wrapped around him, as if trying to hide something. He tried to stand, but felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. When he looked, He saw the scratches left by the creature were still there, as if they were growing deeper. "This is impossible," he said to himself, starting to walk toward the trees. After a few steps, he heard a strange sound. It was like a deep breath, very close to him. When he turned, there was no one, but he felt something cold moving in the air around him. Then he saw something on the ground. It was the camera, Layla's camera. He picked it up hesitantly and pressed play. The small screen showed an old recording, but it wasn't of them. It was of someone else. Someone standing in the same river, screaming before being swallowed. On the screen, words appeared written in red. "You're next." Suddenly he heard a voice behind him. "Carlos." It was Layla's voice, but it wasn't natural. It carried a strange echo, as if it was coming from the depths of the water. When he turned, there was no one, but the fog began to gather again, as if the river was waiting for him. "We'll meet soon." A deep voice whispered in his ear, and he didn't dare look back.